They are not cold. They are terrified of what they feel when they are around you. And that changes everything if you are brave enough to see it. Because what looks like distance is often just restraint under heavy pressure. What looks like pure indifference is often raw emotion trying desperately not to spill over the edge. And what feels like harsh rejection might actually be their deep desire fighting for control. But here is the truth. The human mind does not hide what it does not care about. It only hides what it cannot safely express. And this is exactly where it gets dangerous. Because when someone acts cold toward you, your first instinct is to pull away, to protect your own pride, and to naturally assume that they simply do not care. But what if that perfectly normal reaction is exactly what destroys the connection? What if their heavy silence is not emptiness, but an emotional overflow? Most people do not see this. They read behavior entirely literally. They think warmth means interest and distance means absence. But human psychology does not work that way. The subconscious mind is not always honest. It is highly strategic. It protects the person from emotional exposure, even if it costs them something very real. And you have felt it, haven't you? That strange, heavy contradiction, the way they look at you for half a second too long, and then suddenly, sharply withdraw. The way their entire energy shifts the exact moment you enter the room, even though their words stay perfectly neutral. The way they seem totally unaffected, yet somehow hyper-aware of your every move. That is not a coincidence. That is deep conflict, and conflict is exactly where the truth hides. Because when someone truly does not care about you, there is no tension, there is no hesitation, there is no internal battle playing out behind their eyes. They are simply gone. But this person is not gone. They are calculating every single move, every spoken word, every stolen glance, not because they are maliciously playing games, but because something deep inside them feels entirely too intense to release. And here is what most people completely miss. Intensity, when it is repressed, does not disappear. It transforms. It becomes stiffness. It becomes distance. It becomes highly controlled behavior. It becomes coldness. But underneath that a perfectly controlled surface, there is intense heat. And the more they try to suppress it, the more the internal pressure builds. And pressure always finds a way out. If you are recognizing this exact painful pattern right now, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We dive into the deep, hidden psychology of human connection every single week, and you absolutely will not want to miss what comes next. But here is the part that should deeply unsettle you, because this is not just about them anymore. It is about what this exhausting dynamic is doing to you. The human brain is naturally wired to chase what feels uncertain, and their maddening inconsistency, their constant emotional push and pull, hooks you. It pulls you deeper into their orbit, not because you are weak, but because ambiguity directly activates obsession. And now you find yourself thinking about them far more than you should, endlessly analyzing their behavior, replaying tiny moments in your head, looking for hidden signs, desperately trying to decode something that absolutely refuses to be clear. And this is where it gets dangerous, because now you are heavily emotionally invested in someone who absolutely refuses to be emotionally visible. And your mind starts filling in the blank gaps. You start creating stories, projecting deep meaning, trying to make logical sense of the emotional chaos. But chaos is not random. It is structured, intentional avoidance, because they know that if they fully revealed what they feel, they would completely lose control. And control is their ultimate defense. It is their shield against rejection, against vulnerability, against the terrifying possibility that what they feel might not be safely returned. So instead, they choose the safety of distance. Not because they don't feel anything, but because they feel entirely too much. And here is the deeply uncomfortable question. Why does that distance pull you in instead of pushing you away? Why does their coldness make you more curious instead of less interested? Why does their strict emotional restraint make you feel something so much stronger? This is exactly where your own subconscious enters the story. Because deep attraction is not always about what is freely given to you. Very often, it is about exactly what is purposefully withheld. And when something is withheld, your mind automatically assigns a much higher value to it. You start believing, if I can just break through this thick ice, it will all be worth it. But worth what exactly? Their attention? Their hidden truth? Or is it something much deeper? Validation. Because if someone who hides absolutely everything from the world finally opens up specifically to you, it feels like you have won something rare, something exclusive, something powerful. But here is the heavy truth most people avoid. You are not just drawn to them. You are magnetically drawn to exactly what they are not giving you. And that creates a highly dangerous loop, because the less emotion they show, the more you desperately want. And the more you actively want, the more they become terrified and retreat. And now, both of you are completely trapped. They are exhausting themselves hiding what they feel. You are exhausting yourself chasing what you cannot confirm. And neither of you is actually connecting. You are just silently orbiting each other, always close enough to feel something intense, but never close enough to actually resolve it. And this is where it gets incredibly uncomfortable. Because at some deep level, you already know this. You can physically feel the heavy imbalance in the air. You sense the electric tension. But you stay. You stay because something about this painful dynamic feels strangely familiar. And familiarity is never accidental. It is rooted deep in old patterns you did not consciously choose, but are now unconsciously repeating. And here is the massive question that lingers. The one most people avoid answering honestly. Are they really just a cold person? Or are they perfectly reflecting an emotional pattern you have been subconsciously drawn to your entire life? Because if they are secretly burning underneath the ice and you are endlessly chasing the flame, then the real mystery isn't them. It is you. Let's go even deeper. You did not choose them by pure accident. It felt like natural instinct, like undeniable chemistry, like something just clicked. But here is the brutal truth. What you call chemistry is very often just recognition. Not a recognition of who they actually are, but a recognition of what old wounds they trigger inside you. And what they trigger isn't always healthy. It is just familiar. And familiarity can be deeply deceptive. It can feel safe, like home, even when it slowly erodes your self-worth. Most people do not see this. They falsely believe attraction is always about a real connection. But deeper than connection is pattern. And patterns are built long before this person ever entered your life. They were built in emotional experiences you never fully processed, in past attachments that taught you one silent, devastating rule. Love is something you have to work hard to earn. And suddenly, their freezing coldness makes perfect sense because it directly activates that old rule inside you. It pulls you into endless effort, into proving your worth, into trying harder. And the more they withhold, the more you feel compelled to show up, to be better, to say the right thing, to finally be enough. If this analysis is hitting uncomfortably close to home, drop a comment below and tell me your experience. Getting it out of your head and into the open is the very first step to breaking the cycle. But here is the truth you do not want to admit. You are not actually chasing them anymore. You are chasing resolution, the resolution of something much older, something deeply unfinished. Because when someone is emotionally unavailable, they perfectly mirror a dynamic your subconscious already understands: uncertainty, inconsistency, emotional distance. And your mind does not reject it, it leans in. It leans in because it falsely believes, this time will be different. This time, I will get the loving response I didn't get before. This time, they will choose me. And this is where it gets incredibly dangerous. Because now, your attraction is no longer about who they actually are. It is entirely about what they represent. A chance to finally rewrite something painful. But they absolutely do not know that. And worse, they are trapped in their own unhealed pattern too, because their coldness is not random either. It is learned. It was conditioned and reinforced over a long period of time. Somewhere in their past, they discovered that feeling deeply leads to massive loss, to agonizing rejection, to exposure they simply could not handle. So they adapted. They built absolute control. They learned to heavily suppress their feelings, to keep their emotions contained, to stay just distant enough to avoid ever being hurt again. And now, here you are, someone who feels absolutely everything, magnetically drawn to someone who hides absolutely everything. Not by coincidence, but by grand design, because your openness completely challenges their ultimate defense, and their freezing distance massively intensifies your burning desire. It is a perfect psychological trap. You falsely think that if you just understand them enough, they will eventually open up. You believe that if you are just endlessly patient, they will finally soften. But what if that belief is a tragic illusion? What if their coldness is not just a temporary phase, but a permanent structure they have built their entire adult life around to survive? People do not abandon their thick defenses easily. And now you are faced with a heavy question you have been aggressively avoiding. Are you genuinely trying to connect with them? Or are you secretly trying to change them? Because those two things are absolutely not the same. Real connection requires total acceptance and presence. Trying to change someone requires heavy pressure, and applying pressure always triggers intense resistance. So the harder you try to warmly reach them, the further they coldly withdraw. Not because they don't feel anything, but because they feel completely threatened by the sheer intensity. And now, something subtle starts happening inside of you. Deep frustration, heavy confusion, crippling doubt. You start seriously questioning yourself. Am I imagining all of this? Do they actually care about me at all? Why can't they just be brave enough to show it? And slowly, tragically, your own vibrant emotional state begins to perfectly mirror theirs. You become heavily guarded. You become highly analytical. You become far less expressive. You start playing it cool, too. Not because that is who you truly are, but because you are desperately adapting to survive the painful dynamic. And now, both of you are completely in hiding. Both of you are holding back. Both of you are silently waiting in the dark for the other to break first. But no one ever does, because both of you are fiercely protecting something much deeper. They are protecting themselves from the terror of vulnerability. You are protecting yourself from the agony of rejection, and so the precious connection simply stays perfectly suspended, not growing, not ending, just existing in constant, exhausting tension. And here is the truth that should shake you. This suspended dynamic can last indefinitely. It can steal long months and entire years of your life, built completely on almosts, on things felt deeply but never spoken clearly. And the longer it continues, the more it fundamentally reshapes you. Because unresolved emotion does not stay neutral. It accumulates. It distorts your perception. It violently drains your clarity. But somewhere inside your quiet intuition, you already know this situation isn't stable. You can physically feel the heavy imbalance. You sense the massive emotional gap, but your mind constantly justifies it. You endlessly tell yourself, they just need more time. They are just really scared. But here is the ultimate question. How much of your precious, limited life are you truly willing to wait for something that is absolutely not guaranteed to ever change? Because beautiful potential is not physical reality, and heavily hidden feelings are not an expressed, loyal commitment. This is where most good people get permanently trapped. They fall deeply in love with what a person could be, while completely ignoring what that person actually is right now. And what they are right now is distance, rigid control, and heavy suppression. But the maddening contradiction keeps you hooked. Despite everything, you still undeniably feel them. You still sense that something real is there, something intense that they are holding back. And that haunting, unspoken depth is exactly what keeps your feet planted when you know you should be walking away. Because walking away means accepting a painful reality that not all intense feelings are actually meant to become real, lasting connections. But that heavy tension is building, and it is not going to stay safely contained forever. There comes a moment where your confusion turns into a heavy, unbreakable attachment. Because the human mind cannot tolerate uncertainty, it starts manufacturing its own meaning. You dissect their tone. You search their cold behavior for tiny, hidden signals. You lock onto every brief flicker of warmth as absolute proof that the love is real. And for a brief second, everything makes sense until it disappears again into the cold. And now you are left endlessly chasing a ghost. You think you are responding to the person, but you are actually responding to the empty gap. You are addicted to the vast space between what is being shown and what is secretly being felt. And the human mind is wired to desperately want to close that gap. So you stay engaged, not because the relationship is fulfilling, but because it is completely unresolved. And this unresolved tension eventually starts to violently erode your own sense of self. You start to question your healthy standards. You lower your expectations. You start tolerating cold behavior you once would never accept. and psychological adaptation in a toxic environment eventually becomes total self-betrayal. The more you adjust your boundaries to comfortably fit their cold distance, the less reason they will ever have to actually change. Your endless tolerance becomes their comfortable safety net. Your patience becomes their permission to stay emotionally unavailable. And the dynamic stabilizes completely at your expense. Eventually, something deep inside your soul starts to violently resist the starvation. A quiet voice speaks up, asking heavy questions you cannot ignore anymore. Why am I the only one exhausting myself trying to understand this? And these questions bring massive, uncomfortable friction because they directly challenge the beautiful fantasy story you have been telling yourself. And now you are standing directly at a steep psychological edge. Once you finally see this cold truth clearly, you absolutely cannot unsee it. You cannot pretend the heavy tension is romantic anymore. It just feels like a crushing weight. And this is where the grand illusion finally collapses. You are violently forced to confront something much deeper than them. You are forced to confront your own high tolerance for emotional ambiguity, your own lifelong pattern of giving far more than you receive. Their coldness did not trap you. It clearly revealed you. It revealed exactly how long you are willing to sit and quietly wait for breadcrumbs. Understanding them will absolutely never free you. Deeply understanding yourself will, because the exact moment you finally see your own pattern clearly, the toxic dynamic completely loses its heavy grip on your life. Their hidden feelings were never the main problem. Their absolute inability to brave vulnerability was the problem. And your absolute willingness to quietly accept that was the deeper issue. Because unexpressed, hidden emotion has zero value in a real living connection. It doesn't build a strong foundation. It just selfishly exists in the dark silence. If someone is secretly burning with love for you, but they actively, repeatedly choose to stay freezing cold, then that hidden fire is absolutely not meant to keep you warm. It is meant to teach you the final, vital lesson, exactly when to turn around, protect your peace, and walk away. If this message finally gave you the words for what you have been feeling, hit the like button and subscribe right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear the truth today. Until next time, choose yourself.